Hello everyone, my name is Edwin. I'm currently a second year medical student at the University of Toronto, and I'm super happy to be giving you this video on my journey to medicine and medical school. So before I start, I want to say thank you for the community support for having me, or COS for short. For those who don't know, COS is a program that offers support and resources to students that are applying to programs in the science fields, in particular medical school. So they are an awesome foundation and they offer some really amazing support for students. So really big kudos to them, and I'm incredibly fortunate to be working with them for this past year. To start off, I want to say that everything I mention is my own opinions and not anyone else. In particular, everything I say is coming from the perspective of a mature student. So unlike other medical students that went from university straight into medical school, I actually took some time between university doing some other things, including graduate school and some work before deciding to apply to medical school. So a bit of my education background, I've completed my Bachelor's of Science at McMaster University in Biology and Psychology with a minor in Mathematics. I then completed my master's degree in Neuroscience at McGill University, where I studied Alzheimer's disease and spatial memory impairment. And then after my master's, I actually took a year off doing some teaching and some career exploration before deciding to apply to medical school. So that gap year was actually very important for my own personal development as well as my decision to apply to medical school. So I'm going to touch that in a little bit. So let's start with university all the way back when I started in first year. When I first was a university student, I actually did not want to go into medical school. This was actually a career path that I avoided for a variety of different reasons. It's kind of ironic that I am now in this field. So for the first reason, I did not have a desire to kind of enter this pre-med toxicity that I've noticed on campus. So some of you may actually have heard about it or even experienced it, but for me, in my program, there were a lot of students that were interested in medical school, and unfortunately for some of these science-heavy programs, a lot of students that are really interested in pursuing medicine tend to be very overly competitive, or they have this stereotype that they're cutthroat and need to always compare. And I've actually noticed some of my friends back in university doing this, where they would compare marks with each other, they get very anxious, they get very worried about every little assignment and exam, and that was something that I was not interested and frankly was kind of scared of actually going into. So that kind of put a hold on my desire to go into medicine. The second reason was parental pressure. So as you can see, I am Asian, I'm Chinese background, and I love my parents to death. But unfortunately for many immigrant Asian parents, and if you were born in a household that have very traditional values for work and whatnot, my parents' ideal success back in the day was their child to be either an engineer, doctor, or a lawyer. So that's kind of the deathly triad, as I like to call it. And for me, it took me a long time to realize that whatever I chose to do as a career path, I did not want to do it for anyone but myself. As much as I want to make my parents happy and proud, I know that my own happiness is also something of highly important. So whatever I chose, I need to make sure that I did it for the right reasons. For the third reason, I wanted to just do some career exploration. I was someone that didn't know too much about the medical field in university, even though a lot of my friends were definitely applying. And for me, I really wanted to make sure that I was exploring different avenues of different career paths before I really decided to pick one. In particular, I was really interested in becoming a lecturer and a professor. So something that was always interested of me was to do science research, to go into academia, to do a master's degree, potentially a PhD degree, and then kind of go on to potentially be a professor at a university. That really made me not rush my decision. Actually, it was one of the best decisions of my life to not dive in too quickly into one career or another, because it really gave me the flexibility to ensure that I made the right choices. And then the fourth and final reason why I was a little hesitant on going into medicine was the fear of failing. But when I finally announced that I was deciding to apply to medicine with a few selected people, I told my brother this, and he's one of my best friends, and he knows me inside and out. And then one night we were having this discussion, and he told me that he always thought I wanted to apply to medicine, but I was always scared, particularly of failing and that stigma of not getting in the first time of applying. And for me, that was something that hit home really hard because it was not something I actively thought about. But as I started to reflect more, noticed that a lot of my actions towards medicine was purely on hesitancy and anxiety based. For me to finally choose to decide to go to medical school was a huge decision of mine. When I did university, a lot of students were actually asking me about, do you need to do research? Is there a specific program to apply to? Are there certain courses to do? And for all those reasons, I say no. There's no, in my opinion, a checklist that you have to do. There is no magic program or school that will enable you to get into medical school or for any professional programs for that matter. I really find that being authentic, being genuine, and really finding your own passion and interest is what inevitably is going to make you stand out in your application. And also, it's going to make you a better person. You never want to go into a field and feel like you have to be a robot, especially in a field where physicians have to be some of those empathetic people for patients who are incredibly vulnerable. They're not looking for robots. They're not looking for someone who can do A, B, C, D. They're just looking for people to be human and genuine, and that's what really matters. And if you're able to find those interests, that's going to be a huge asset to your application process. So kind of going into my graduate school, I love my time in McGill. I love doing research. I love learning about science and the brain. However, what kind of made me a little hesitant again to kind of pursue going to be a professor and to apply for a PhD is because a lot of the jobs that supervisors and PIs have to do were quite bureaucratic, and that's something that was not interesting, nor do I think I could see myself doing for a very, very long time. Once I did my master's, I was like, I have some time left. What do I need to do? What can I do? So I took a gap year voluntarily and ended up doing some teaching. So I was very fortunate that I was working with a tutoring company at the time in Montreal, and they were affiliated with a private school that had a teaching position. And luckily in Montreal, they actually don't require a teaching license. So I was actually able to be hired as a high school teacher on the spot based on the recommendation of the tutoring company to the school. And that was where I was able to teach a high school class, a grade 10 science class, and I was also working as a private tutor and also giving lectures at McGill. This gap year was instrumental for me to continue my passion for education, because without this gap year, I wouldn't have been able to find this interest of mine and use this interest to really propel my application for medical school. So kind of bringing to the final end of why I chose to go into medicine. For me, my reason and rationale for pursuing medicine is not necessarily to be the best surgeon or the best physician, and I think that best physician actually has different meanings for different people. For me, having that medical degree gives me a platform to educate others that I don't think I would have an opportunity to have access to, especially in these political and pandemic climate where there's so much scientific misinformation out there, and how not a lot of people are incredibly literate in the scientific field. Having an MD gives me that influence, hopefully, to be able to teach others and to advocate for science and for health that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to do without having this medical degree. Going into medicine was an educator path for me, and I would love to continue on this. And again, this would not have happened if I did not have that gap year. This kind of summarizes a brief summary of what I did for medical school, why I chose to go into medicine. If you have any other things that you want me to talk about, feel free to leave your comments below. Make sure to give this a like, and I'm looking forward to giving more videos and answering some of your questions in the future. Thanks for listening.